got the bachelor course in Madou University in Belgium. Pronunciation is right. And in the same university, he got the master's course and his doctoral thesis title is N and E type phosphorus and semiconductor electrode. And he has had a lot of employment. Now he's chancellor professor in University of California Science. And he has a lot of representative publications, especially his father steady microfluidics. And he wrote a book as considered Bible fragments. Okay, let's welcome Mr. Tom.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you. Is it working? So, good evening. Welcome. This is on, yeah. My talk is pretty short. It is about a 10-year adventure in international research and collaboration. I want to tell you the good aspects of working internationally and also some of the downsides of it. Overall, it's actually very good. It's very positive to work in an international, especially for the students. So I have named my talk Globalization of Research. And you will see shortly, I have to keep it that hard, because globalization of research is easy to discuss. Because research is global anyways. A research result needs to be standing out anywhere. You cannot have any outcome of a physics experiment that's different at Harvard than it is at UNIST. So research by nature needs to be global. But as we all know, globalization has had quite some serious flaws recently. And there's a lot of people actually debating culturally and socially about globalization. Because of that, I will hopefully mostly talk about globalization of research. As I said, the big winners in doing international research are the students. Actually, the two pictures you see here on the front, the one on the left, I think you recognize some of the people there, right, you remember where this was? It is in Ulsan. It's in the Royal Anchor, Songnam-dong. Yeah. And in the picture are two of my first students that I brought here with me, Robin Gorken and Rodrigo Martinez, and the blonde girl on the right is Rodrigo's wife. And then these are three of our dear colleagues here at UNIST. And one of the three actually has been also at UC Irvine. So there has been an active interchange of students between UCI and UNIST. By the way, this is my third year here at UNIST, and I spent 3 to 4 months the previous years and also this year. I will spend about 4 months on campus. I have done this international research for about 10 years, and we have now students pretty much all over the world. On the right is actually a student from Spain that came to work in my group in California at UCI, and is now working in Imperial College in the UK. And you will see throughout my talk examples of people that have come out of my team and been spread out all over the world. From Mexico to India, to Canada, to Malaysia, and so forth. So you see some examples. But before going there, I do want to tell you a little bit about where I do not want to go into too much detail. If you have questions tonight, it should be tonight, over a beer. Because when you talk about social consequences of globalization, it can lead you very far. Even at noon, I was reading the Korea Times. There's 3 pages in the Korea Times, either today or yesterday, about the difficulty Korea has with accepting foreigners, with accepting globalization. that overall Koreans profess they want to be global, but their instinct is still a little bit negative about it. So please read these articles. It's interesting reading. A lot of the people that write are Koreans that came back from the United States and might have a very different perspective on this. Now, I'm sure a lot of you read books on this big issue of globalization. And if you look on the screen here, there's 4 books. And the 2 on the right have a right-wing kind of view on the situation. And that's also where my title comes from Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat. And then another book by Thomas Friedman that basically says everything is very good. If you do globalization, we all win, the whole world will be better for it. But there's some other people, those on the left, especially the one World on Fire by Amy Hua, is very, very well done. That actually says, well, wait a minute, it's not all that rosy. There are some issues. The same is Joseph Stiglitz, which some of you might know is a Nobel laureate economy, that have started recognizing, we better be careful. This globalization does not come without problems. And so, the political and business aspects of globalization are complex and have given globalization actually a bit of a bad name. You all follow the news, and I'm sure you have seen there is protests now on Wall Street. There's protests in many places that basically are protesting to some degree globalization. Because there's an elite of big companies and banks that have won majorly, but other people have actually not won so much. And so the subtitle of my talk alludes to a book by Friedman, the first one. And I must say that in my analysis, but that's what we can discuss, right? You're scientists, that perhaps Friedman is wrong, that globalization is not a cure for all ills. It is not so simple. Not everyone has won. I travel enough around the world to see there's victims also. And so the third point I'm making is the rules governing globalization favor developed countries, while the developing countries sink ever lower. And even within the developing countries, the difference between rich and poor has become larger. And you cannot call that a favorable trend. That is actually a dangerous trend. So, in my opinion, that is one of the reasons that we need to do science and research with developing countries. Because if you leave some countries too far behind, it eventually will come to harm you. It's kind of the same within a country. If you let people become too rich against the rest of the population, you might have a grand, beautiful house, but in a derelict street. We all know places where this has happened. Globalization has unfortunately only looked at monetary rewards, rather than other factors that are involved, one being the environment. So again, this is the second reason why we need to do science and research on green energy and sustainable societies. Science with a heart, that's what we should do. And with a view to a better world for all. Korea being in a good position right now, funding-wise, you should not repeat the mistake of other countries. Do not do it just for Korea. Because Korea is not isolated, just like America is not isolated. We are integrated. If you do it for your own gains, it will be a limited short-term benefit, in my opinion. Final bullet point, and then I stop about this because this is sociology, philosophy, economy, and that's not my subject. I didn't want to quickly switch to research, okay? But at least I want to tell you where I'm at in terms of these aspects. The new system of globalization has basically forced a new economic system on developing countries. We told them what they ought to produce for us. The new economic system is seen as an Americanization of their policies as well as culture. This has caused quite a bit of resentment and financial damage. What I again suggest is that we as foreigners, for example, here in Korea, we actually should not try to change too much. You should actually respect the countries where you work in, because Many of you have a biology background. You know diversity is good. Do not all try to be the same. That doesn't make any sense. So I think we have to have a more balanced view towards globalization. Enough politics, sociology, etc. Let's now go to science. I will talk two columns. Why do we want to do international research? And I go over each of these points, and how do we do it? And it turns out, this talk I developed actually for our dean at UC Irvine, actually the former dean, who wanted to promote University of California at Irvine faster and wider. And of course, that's what UNIST wants to do. A relatively new university on the block. I would say very new, very young. One of the ways to quickly get recognition is to be very quickly international. Yeah? And so these will be, on the left, the different reasons why. It will include improving student body. I have found myself it's a really good publication amplifier. You get much faster many more publications. And access to broader equipment. However rich you are, you cannot have all of the scientific equipment. But you might be able to go to different places and thereby expose your students to different equipment bases. Fourth bullet point, extremely important. You gain access to funding sources internationally. And more of that money is becoming available. For example, in the European context, same in Asia. There's more and more international funding available. And research needs money. The following bullet point is an easy one to recognize. If you attract foreign students and the best, these will eventually talk about your university. And they faster spread the news that this is a good university. So you quickly get international recognition. The second bullet from the bottom, in the left column, I myself have found the most rewarding. That is seeing, for example, American kids that really don't know much culturally. The newspapers only talk about the US. They come back from India, for example, as better people. They have understood more of the world. And that is so important, that your mind opens up. And this is, in my opinion, especially true for a very homogeneous country like Korea. Sometimes when I walk around in Seoul or in Ulsan, I start feeling afraid. Because I only see Koreans, I want to see blonde people, red people, black people. I like that. And sometimes I miss that. And I don't know, I talk to some of you, say, yeah, if I come to America, this guy, Taeyong, I will always remember one point he said, I'm so happy here in California, isn't it? And so, be open to that. The last bullet point is actually one that was made by Colin Powell, that international research is perhaps the best way of spreading peace. It might help you securing your borders much better than buying bombs. Then how are we going to do it? You use your international known faculty members to begin with, because they are invited to foreign places anyways. The video casting of hot topic classes is something that I have started doing here. I just started putting some of my classes I teach here on YouTube. I think this is a very good way of spreading the fame and name of an institute. Joint and dual degrees, very difficult to implement, but that would be great. If, for example, a student can get a degree at UC Irvine at UNIST, or Stanford and KAIST, but it turns out legally, in terms of implementing that, it's a difficult task. Involve the IP offices very quickly, because you can recognize this will also be one of the problems. Intellectual property, if you work so international, who owns what's in your head? You have some people working in 3 or 4 different countries, and you come together and you come up with this new idea. Who will own it? And I have recently started thinking actually that IP, intellectual property, is holding us back a little bit. We are not so open as we should be, in my opinion, because of the fear of losing your thought. Now, this is good news for the students here. Actually, this whole thing, this whole construct only works on the student level. Us professors, we can talk about it, but we have never time for anything. It's the students that we need to combine and have worked together on joint papers, a joint project. These can maintain a long lifeline between the different institutes that do international work. And then how, again, intergovernmental funding sources, and switch even to foreign companies. I will give it later an example. We have now an ongoing project with Samsung, and we are looking at other projects where my team and the team here at UNIST have a Samsung project. This is, I think, one of the benefits. And then how, again, needs a bicultural coordinator per country. Okay, about this improving student body. Having an international president is the best way to screen and attract the best foreign student application. Let me tell you how that works. All of the professors, especially in the United States, especially in California, we get pretty much every week 10, 20 applications. A lot of China, a lot of India, Korea, and we hardly read them. We cannot afford it, we don't have the time. But now, since I work in India, I see the students that I might invite. I'm here in Korea, I see the students that I might say, yeah, that's a good one to have in my group. So it helps a lot to create a very, very good student body, because you can screen. Because, you know, a CV, an essay that people write, you know, we don't believe anymore what's in there. We've been too many times scooped, you know. So seeing the person and talking directly helps a lot. Then also, you can see it that students that, for example, might consider going to Seoul National University instead of here. If a university like UNIST is that international and pioneers this for Korea, we will attract brave students that are willing to set that step. And so I think this could be the calling card of this new university. That is one of universities in Korea that pioneers this international collaboration. Again, then some pictures to kind of illustrate that we've been doing this. Some of you recognize that man. He was here at UNIST. This is Rodrigo Martinez that worked on CD technology. He was one of my PhD students at UC Irvine. He's from Mexico originally. I recruited him as follows. I was invited to Mexico to give a talk like this, and he had organized a 600 people conference, very confident, kind of, very good organizer. I said, there's something in that guy. And so he came to do his PhD in my school, was here then at UNIST, and now he's in EPFL in Switzerland, one of the best schools in Europe. Below that is actually a picture I'm very proud of. One of my students, Robin Gorkin, went to IIT Kharagpur. And in IIT Kharagpur, he made a good friend with another student, Govind Bisht. And he said, Dr. Madou, you have to hire Govind Bisht. He's a very, very good student. And I did, and indeed, it is a very good student. He just got a nanoletters paper in March, invented a new way of nano-writing with polymer wires, continuous for 45 minutes. Started a company together with Robin Gorkin, and here is accepting a prize from a venture capital company that was looking at their business plan. So they made a good friendship in Kharagpur and kind of carried it through at UC Irvine. These are the type of things you want to see. Publication and idea amplifier. This is more for the faculty members to consider. What good does it do for me to spread out all of my ideas? Because you will lose some of them. Some people will be kind of scooping it, stealing it, but you have to be brave and say, okay, in my case I'm old enough, I'm not an assistant professor, so if someone scoops something, okay, well, I have other ideas, right? But I have found that overall, you will actually be scooped a little bit, but you will have many more papers coming out than you would if you do not go international. Here, I'm illustrating this with my collaboration with IIT Kanpur. In India, IIT Kanpur is the foremost academic institution. I worked there with Ashutosh Sharma. I introduced a new field called carbon MEMS. Now, Ashutosh Sharma is chemical engineering, is one of the brightest people I've worked with in my career. He has taken my idea and added to it, brought new concepts. Don't blindly mimic, because then people, oh, come on, you know, this is like Samsung and Steve Jobs. Who invented really the iPad? Steve Jobs. Who mimicked it? Samsung, right? So there's no respect for that. You must come up with something that's yours. That everyone recognizes, not lawyers, because lawyers will always fight you. They will always say that their company got it first. But the common man in the street, even in Korea, respects Steve Jobs. From all of the articles I saw, yes, they got it. Kind of the same here. You want these ideas that foreigners bring, you don't want to mimic them at all. You want to take some of it and make it your own, amplify. You will see that will buy you much more respect in the outside world, and you will get many, many more papers. In this case, I'm talking about this field carbon MEMS that I invented and pioneered, that Ashutosh Sharma then switched, instead of doing just lithography on polymers and carbonizing them, he used electrospin. And now that electrospinning, we took it back here at UNIST and building on that to suspend carbon nanowires between posts. So it goes like this. You, him, you, that. You move faster up the ladder to new knowledge. And that is the power of globalized research, not mimicking things. That's an obvious one. I don't have to spend much time on that. You can never buy all the equipment you need, especially for nanotechnology. So if you can send students according to the lab and the needs they have at that time for their master's or PhD project, they will gain. They come back in their CV, they can show, I work with the dual beam focused ion beam milling, I work with this and this, that normally in one institute they might not be able to do. So I can be fast about that. Access to more funding, that's a simple one too. If you're exposed to more collaborators, you work in different countries, you can get more funding. In our case, of course, we have benefited both ways, my university and of course UNIST from the WCU program. I have brought now altogether 6 students of mine to this university, paid for by that program. We have proposed for the US Korea Nanobio program, NBIT, that one we didn't get. We are actually currently looking at an NSF Korea NRF joint program. We did land a Samsung project, and that's with Korea. Then with Canada, actually probably 60 or 70% of my funding in the US comes from Canada. So going international is important for funding. Almost final in terms of why. International recognition. I think that going this international route will build UNIST much faster, an international name. You know, when I came here 3 years ago, actually most of the taxi drivers didn't know where UNIST was, even in Ulsan. You know, so now that's improved quite a few know, but that's not what we want, right? We want the world to know where UNIST is. And for that, we need to bring some of you guys to other places in the world, and we need to bring international people here. Because these will be the leaders of the world, they will become professors in well-known universities, and they will refer to you. And that's a very good way to establish very fast your name. So to well-known partner universities, through Memorandum of Understanding on the top, we are signing a Memorandum of Understanding between IIT Kanpur, IIT Kharagpur, Northwestern University, Urbana-Champaign, and there is one more. Urbana-Champaign, no, that's it. UCI, I'm forgetting the wrong university. I thought there was another one. And at the bottom, I'm sure you recognize some people there. Your VP here from UNIST is on the picture. And that's when we were signing the Memorandum of Understanding for Research between UC Irvine and UNIST. So through word of mouth, by our international exchange student, UNIST and UCI both will get more recognition worldwide. I would say this is perhaps the most important one for students. That's what I have enjoyed the most, seeing my students grow up. Up there, a bunch of them are in IIT Kanpur. On the right, that's one of the girls we sent, Ruth Lambert, to IIT Kharagpur. Then there's a picture there at the bottom that's in Kedarnath, in the Himalayas. And this one, you probably know where this is. loud, right? Let's see. Can you help me put the sound up here? Does someone know the sound panel? To increase this a bit? Do you know how to increase the sound? I can do that. It should be this one. Yeah, I got it. Okay, you guys ready for some Korean drumming? This was one of the best performances I've seen of the 3 years I was here. Before I came here, I thought Koreans were like white people. They cannot dance and they have no sense for music. But look. This was in Jeju Island just 10 days ago or so. Anyways, we have to move on. You see, this is what makes it all worthwhile. Same in India. Every time you go, you see things you've never seen before. And that's also why I think you should not change the places where you are. Suppose we all dance the same way. It would become very boring, right? So let's keep it interesting. Then finally, why? Don't underestimate this one. This is a statement by Colin Powell, Secretary of State, 2001-2005. To solve most of the major problems facing our country today, that was about the US, but I would say it's global. From wiping out terrorism to minimizing global environmental problems to eliminating the scourge of AIDS will require every young person to learn more about other regions, cultures and languages. So if we do not take this serious, this warning, the world will be a worse place for your children. And so that, maybe philosophically, is something independent of your religion or your race you can agree with. So along that line, actually, I have done a lot of effort in Mexico, Malaysia. We just started in Africa. We also have some timid approaches to working with a group in Iran. So this is actually a meeting here at the bottom in IPN, Instituto Politécnico Nacional, in District Federal in Mexico. On top, you see actually the signing of an MOU with Fatima Ibrahim of the University of Malaya. And actually, Fatima was here last year for a short time. And the bottom picture is actually the former Prime Minister of Malaysia, who we met 2 times now and have actually funded some of our joint work. How? I will go very fast about this because some of you guys are hungry already probably. I think we're going to walk together, have something to eat. And I also want to hear some questions from you guys, okay? So I'll go quickly about how. Well, one is, this is expensive. So maybe one way you can start this, your better known faculty that are internationally known, they will travel a lot anyways. So, you know, start those to begin with. Then you take efforts that really seem to be working. For example, at UC Irvine, we have a long-standing collaboration with the Basels Foundation, which is in Catalonia, in Spain. A rich Catalonian who made his money in California decided to give back. And so he's inviting every year so many Catalan students to come study at UCI. These are good models. I don't know if you realize, but Irvine, where UCI is, has a very big, rich Korean community. Actually, quite a few famous Korean software developers are there. So the same thing. You can hope that they sponsor some Korean students to come to UCI. These are the ways you have to build these international relationships. Video casting, I told you about that already. Perhaps if you want to see some examples of the YouTube videos that I start putting up for the classes I teach here, you can go on to this Fundamentals of Manual Fabrication WordPress blog. You can actually see a lot of the pictures there also of our adventures in Ulsan, Busan, etc. But you can see quite a bit of our classes that I'm starting to put up there as well. By the way, I've done this for quite a while, teaching classes in Monterrey, Mexico. That was very successful. Did it for 2 years, but then we got a new team who wanted me to ask money for it. And that didn't go that easy. So we're waiting, if they want to pay some money for it, we will restart it. IP, you should involve your intellectual property offices immediately in these endeavors. Should be based, I told you that, it will not work unless the students are the active ingredient in that. You can just seed it, and then you hope that the students are social or good, how to say, survivors. And they like that other country and they make friends. Then it will succeed. It's totally based on the nature character of the students that go abroad. The professor can prod a little bit, he can help a little bit, but there's really not much he can do. But that is key. Because then, say the students stay 3 months or 6 months in the other country, you cannot finish a paper. They will only finish a paper if they continue to correspond, if they continue to discuss. And so maybe then the student can come back one more time, because you need at least a year and a half to jointly develop a paper of value. I think you should eventually then, as UNIST, have bicultural coordinators. So per country, for example, there should be, in this case I'm presenting Sejino, who's Korean living in America. So he could be a good coordinator for the link between UNIST and UCI. And eventually, UNIST should actually have a coordination office in all of the major countries. To kind of tell you how fast these international relations go, how fast it builds up, just between my university, University of California and Irvine, we have all of these links with places in Korea. I was actually amazed to find that out. I thought I was the only one from UC Irvine doing some research in Korea. But look at it. There's actually a whole list. And you will not go into any detail because that doesn't really matter too much for you. And I will end with another Korean little video. And then we can take some questions. That was also in Jeju Island. Anyways, that's it. So, any questions? Yes?
Thank you for a very insightful talk today. Especially, I really like your comment that you do research not only for Korea. I have a question about your IP, the intellectual property.
Yeah.
But you said the IP usually drawbacks.
Yeah.
Drawback of the better research.
Yeah.
But many people think that the IP actually enlist some of better research or amplify some of research because of due to triggers people,
Yeah.
And so I just want to ask you, is it really working? Do you think? Say, what kind of thinking are you planning for something?
This is on young here anyway. So I have really thought about this a lot, and I have a lot of patents myself. And I have startup companies, and I work with big companies. I have seen it from many different angles. But what I have started finding is that, in a way, there's a conflict of interest. Lawyers always want to get a patent because they know other people might fight that patent, and so they have always more business. And so, if you too quickly start talking about patenting something, instead of thinking about new ways of avoiding a certain technique, you will actually lock in your mind, especially if you talk about more fundamental stuff. If everyone would sit there, and I don't dare to talk to you because I'm afraid you will walk out of the meeting and go talk to a lawyer. That is so destructive. And so there's like two sides on this coin. If I'm a small startup company, I've seen this a lot. This is not another thing to think about. I'm a small startup company. A big company sues me. I will lose no matter what. Because I have no time to defend myself. I don't have the budget. So is that fair? Another one. Drug companies are screening drugs in Africa and then selling them at prices that Africans cannot afford. So I see these negative things, but I also recognize that in a way, for about 30 years, the engine in the US was IP. But because of this internationalization, I think we have to rethink it on how we do it. Because if we slow down conversations, because people are afraid to talk to each other, I think that it's a negative point.
More question? I have one more question. Koreans want to be international, people. Most biggest problem is language barrier. How do you feel in terms of foreigner communication in Korea or student with student?
Right. To be frank, that has been very difficult. For foreigners, the most difficult issue is the language. I can go to Malaysia, India, everywhere is better than Korea. Korea is very difficult. And of course, you can imagine why that is. It's historical. In these other countries, for example, Malaysia, you had the English. You unfortunately have the Japanese, and that didn't help much for your English, did it? So we understand, right? It's a big issue. And I think if Korea really means they want to be global, I think a lot more effort will have to be done yet on the language. Because, I mean, we all know the language of science is English. It's actually so bad that when people see an article now, scientific article in another language, they say, it's probably because it's not very good, right? They don't want to show it to the world. And you know, this is a direct consequence of not wanting to do globalization. Like, you know, I can do it all by myself. You start believing your own, you know, BS. So yes, please, more English. Once I was in a taxi and I asked him for the airport, and he did not understand. And then I did this. But I also think the Hangul has forced your mind into putting words in a little square. And so now, when I hear Koreans speak, I understand why they say certain things. Like, you will never say fish, you will say fisher. You put an at the end. And I didn't understand why. Now I know, because you need to fill in that little square, so you need another vowel there, right? So there's many of the Koreans that I knew when I was in California, I now understand why they say certain things. So in that sense, it already helped a little bit. By the way, about learning Korean for foreigners, so Camille, why don't you introduce yourself? I understand he speaks Korean better than most of you. So Camille, why don't you tell where you're from and how many times you've been here in Korea? And you guys tell me if he does well. Come try.
안녕하세요. 제 이름은 강민입니다. 미국에서 여기요 우리 친구들요.
Well, okay, what did he say?
감사합니다.
Any more questions? can translate for me.
Not that.
If you don't have question, we can ask more question in dinner time.
Yeah, supposedly there's Makale and there's. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.